So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Cuckoo back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Wednesday, January 5th here today, coming off another big night in sports last night. It is, in fact, Wednesday, January 5th here today. Hopefully everybody's having a day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. I apologize. No podcast yesterday. It was definitely, I definitely want to get back to the regular Monday through Friday every single day. It's been a while, really, since I've done a full week of podcasts with no interruptions, with no days off. So my just scheduling and timing and stuff like that, like I said, this is the podcasts are a side thing, right? The podcasts are a side thing. So whenever I get time to do them, I do them, and it's much more consistent now. Definitely, I've been doing a lot more of them. But still hoping to get more onto a consistent basis of back to what I was doing Monday through Friday. The summer's definitely easy for that, but during this time of year, it's definitely a little harder for me to get them all done. But I try to get as much content and as much videos as I can out for you guys. With the playoffs coming up, I definitely want to make sure I can't be missing anything too much, because once the playoffs come around and the NFL and NBA and NHL are in the heat of their seasons, and college basketball and all that, I can't miss out on any of that stuff. So I got to make sure that whenever I can do them, I do them. I've been on a pretty consistent rate with when I've been doing them. It's just been a matter of making sure to get them all in. I don't know. Did I do a podcast every day last week? I don't believe I did. I think I only did one Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Which was, I think that was last week. I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of been all over the place. But I'm doing one today. That's all that matters. Take it day by day. I guess you could always say you got to just focus on what's happening. So right now, I'm doing a podcast, and we got a lot to get to. Kentucky took a tough loss last night. A really tough loss. I mean, just words can't describe the way we played. I mean, we just did not play well. Sloppy. It was really sloppy, really frustrating as a fan sitting there watching that game unfold, specifically the final 20 seconds. Pretty much summed up that game. You had a 61-60 game. They go down, LSU passes it down court. Shibwe steals it. Passes it to Davion Mintz. It was a bad pass. Mintz has got to save it. He gives it to Grady. Grady gives it away. LSU then scores at 63-50. Then Kentucky tries to go up court with about 10 seconds to go. They get it stolen. LSU goes down court. He scores 65-60 with like 6 seconds left, and Kentucky chucks up a shot, misses, and that's game. So, really frustrating loss, a really tough loss. And this team, that was a reality check. That was a big game for us. That was a big game to see how we matched up against a very good LSU team, and clearly we weren't good enough. So they got to be way better. Sloppy basketball, you could say, oh, yeah, we were without Wheeler and Ty Washington, but even when they were in, we were playing sloppy, and we were not making good passes. We weren't getting to the net. I mean, why is Jacob Toppin shooting back-to-back mid-range when he's got an open lane? He's got to take that lane, take it to the net, try to draw a foul. He decided to do that the third time he got it late in the second half, and he got it, and he missed, but he got to the free throw line and he made 1 of 2. So Kentucky's just got to be smarter when you have the ball. Don't always feel the need to shoot. When you get it, you have the option: drive or kick it out, look for better options, call in a screen, do something. Physical LSU team took advantage of us, and we got smoked. So no other way to put it. Really tough loss. And, we got to figure out a way, because, with everything going on, with the AP poll, we're going to drop. And there's no other way to put it. We are going to drop. And we got to figure out how to dig ourselves out of this little hole we put ourselves into, because that's a big road loss against a good LSU team. That if you would have won that game, the committee and stuff, the AP poll thinks, the fans, college basketball, they think of you up here. Now they think of us as a team that's still, a team that's got talent, but can we put it together? And this is, again, we find ourselves with Kentucky, right? We have talent. It's just, why is it not clicking? Why is it not clicking? I guess we'll see. So, tough loss last night. Tonight, Kyrie Irving plays basketball. So, that takes me into my next topic here, or kind of the topics for today. Let's get into what's on tap for today's podcast. We got Kyrie Irving returns. So, yes, you have heard that right. Kyrie Irving is making his return tonight against the Indiana Pacers on the road against the Pacers in Indiana. It's a quick one-day pit stop in between a homestand. So we are at a 3-game homestand. Now we head on the road here to play against the Pacers before going back home for 2 more games, and then we head on the road for 2, then go back home for 2, and then I'm really targeting the later in January, mid-January, the 4-game road trip we were on, Monday, January 17th, all the way until Sunday, January 23rd. So a 6-day road trip starting in Chicago, ending in Minnesota. That would be a big road trip for Kyrie Irving and the Nets to really get going, really start to, play well as they slot him in to the lineup. So Kyrie Irving playing tonight, and what we hear from Steve Nash is that Kyrie is expected to play a big chunk of the game. So, doesn't look like he's going to be on a minutes restriction. I think a lot of it will have to do with how the game's going. If the Nets are, dominating and crushing the Pacers, you probably say, hey, sit him down for the fourth quarter. But if the Nets are winning, if it's a close game, if it's a 2-score game or a 1-score game or a tie game going into the fourth, you'd imagine Kyrie Irving's going to get a pretty big load in the fourth along with Harden and KD. So we'll get to that. We'll talk about Kyrie Irving. We're also going to get to Derrick Henry and some of the update, kind of breaking news on him. He has been he's gotten the okay to be activated from the IR. So it's all about now the Titans officially activate him. So they designate him to return. Officially opens Derrick Henry's window to return to practice off IR. So Derrick Henry's back at practice. He's back ready to go. Question is when will he be back in a game? I don't know if he'll be back this week. I don't know if they want to rush him back this early, but definitely for the first round of the playoffs, which will be the wild card game for them. So you gotta expect that will probably be Derrick Henry, his first game back. And let me tell you something, that's huge. I mean, that is massive. I don't think you really realize the magnitude of how big it is to get a guy like Derrick Henry back in the lineup. So we'll see how everything plays out with that. We'll talk about him, talk about the Titans, what it means for them, and then we'll get to the New York sports update and the rest of the sports world. Rangers another day off. They start a West Coast trip tomorrow night. Nets, like I said, on tonight. Knicks got a very much needed win last night and a very needed big game from RJ Barrett. So the Knicks day off today before they host the Celtics tomorrow night on TNT, along with the Rangers another day off today before starting up their West Coast trip tomorrow in Vegas against the Golden Knights. And the Nets tonight head for a quick pit stop in Indiana Indianapolis Indiana, whatever you want to call it, against the Pacers. So that should be good. Kyrie returns. He plays basketball today. He will be in a Brooklyn Nets uniform tonight playing with the Big Three. So a lot to get to today on the podcast. With all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So Kyrie Irving expected to play big chunk of game in season debut for Nets versus Pacers. Yes, you've heard that right. Kyrie Irving is but is going to play tonight and is expected to play a big chunk of the game, whatever you want to say, for the Nets tonight as they head on the road to play the Pacers. And look, right, it's great he's back. I'm pumped up for it. I'm excited for it. I've been wanting this for a while. I think all of us Nets fans, if we could be at full strength, even if it's for half of our games, we want to be at full strength, right? And especially the way the Nets have been playing recently. We're on a 3-game skid. It's been 3 ugly losses. Losing against the Timberwolves was the latest, just disappointment, and then you lose to the Clippers, which just can't happen, and all that stuff going on, and it's just super frustrating right now as a Net fan because, we were playing so well. We got off of the, the LA sweep against the Lakers and the Clippers, then you return home, you lose, then then you return home. And now you lose 3 straight. Your 3 straight losses come against the Sixers, which you didn't play well. Then you go to play the Clippers, you don't play well. You play the Grizzlies, and you play terrible. Clippers game, you blow a late lead, 13. You're up 13 with 5 minutes left. You lay off of them a little bit. You blow a late lead, and then you lose, and now you lose. Then you lose to the Grizzlies, and that Grizzlies game was ugly. And I know you could say, oh, well, the young players played much better towards the end. Yeah, either way, guess what? We still lost that game by 14. We got crushed. Yeah, we cut it to about 10 or 11 late, but we still got smoked. It ended up being 118-104, and that is not the Brooklyn Nets we expected, nor is that the Brooklyn Nets that's going to win a title. If this team wants to win a title, they need to be way better than what they showed in the past 3 games. And those 3 games being at home, right? And that's the most frustrating part of it, right? You go on the road, Lakers on Christmas Day, you win. Clippers 2 days later, you win. Then you go home, you have a 3-game homestand. You're like, there's got to be some juice. There's got to be some energy. You just beat the Lakers and the Clippers, 2 games in a row in LA and on the West Coast, and it's always hard to win whenever you're on the West Coast. I don't care how good you are. And then you go home, you lose 3 straight. And it's like, wow, what, it feels like that Lakers and Clippers, those Lakers-Clippers wins feel like years ago because of how bad we played at home. And you got to defend home court, and you got to, home games, you got to take advantage of them, right? Especially when an extended homestand, right? You have a West Coast trip, you go home for 3 games. You got to take advantage of that. You took, you did well on the West Coast trip, you got to come home, and you got to take advantage at home. And the Nets didn't do that. And, you could say whatever you want about Kyrie Irving playing tonight. You could say whatever you want about, oh, he's going to mess things up. Here's my question to you, okay? The Nets are playing awful. What really can he mess up? Because the Nets have been brutal the past 3 games. And tonight is a big game for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not saying tonight's game is going to make or break their season. But all I'm telling you is this. If the Nets get hammered tonight, and then we go home and then we have to play the Bucks, at home, which is never easy. I don't care what the Bucks record is. I don't care if they've underachieved a little bit this season. They've been much better of late. They're 25-14. Okay, then you got to go home and play the Bucks, who right now, as it stands, are right with you near that 2 seed. Bulls, Nets, Bucks, Heat, all around each other when it comes to trying to battle out for that 1 seed. So this is a big game tonight. And I feel like with the way the Nets have been playing, it's like Kyrie couldn't have come at a better time. Because the Nets have been awful the past 3 nights. And tonight is a big game in terms of just getting on the right track. Because you can't possibly tell me you go play tonight, lose by 20, and then expect to go back to Barclays Center and beat the Bucks. And that game will obviously be without Kyrie because he won't be playing home games at the moment. Who knows what happens with the vaccine mandates and whatever he decides to do with New York City and stuff like that by the time. People talking about finals already is way too far out. All right, let's get to the finals first, then we could talk about finals. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I truly mean that in just hey, we still got a whole season ahead of us. I'm not really, I wouldn't really right now be focused on finals when we're, 40 or when we're what? What are we this season? We're 23 and 12. So I want to be focusing on finals when we're only 35 games into the season. We're not even halfway through the season. So, you could talk about NBA finals and all that stuff if we get there. What if Kyrie can only play, let's say we have home field court advantage and he can only play 3 of the 7 games. If we get to 7, or maybe he only plays 2 of the 4 if we sweep it, whatever happens, or vice versa, whatever happens. That's not on my radar screen right now. What's on my radar screen right now is the fact that Kyrie's coming back. He's going to bring what he's always brought. And that is a really good ball handler, one of the best players in the game, a good passer, going to get to the rim and finish. And ultimately, which the Nets are good this year, but through the past 3 games, the Nets have forgotten how to hit free throws, and especially big ones. We've forgotten how to hit big free throws in big games. I mean, I love KD. He's been awesome. But that Clippers game, I recall, he missed the one free throw late. And who knows, if he makes that, it would have been a one-possession game. The next time the Nets got the ball, could have been completely different. You don't realize how big free throws are until, you don't realize how big free throws are until you lose a game because you missed 5 free throws or you missed a free throw late in the game that could have made it a one-score game instead it turns. You don't realize how big free throws are until you miss them. It's one of those stats that you make your free throws, that's great, and then when you start missing them and you lose games because of it, then you really realize this is big. So you get that element back. And overall, you just get a boost, energy. I expect tonight the Nets to come out with a lot of energy, right? You're getting one of your guys back, Kyrie, and we're not talking about no rotation player. We're talking about Kyrie Irving that is coming back, a player who, before this season, everyone was saying, is one of the better players in the league. And obviously, you can't count that right now because he hasn't played yet this year. But in terms of overall, he still is one of the best players in the league. And I treat this as, look, Nets fans could say, oh, what if he can't, he missed all these games. Look, just treat it as he was injured, right? It was out of your control. The mandates, COVID and stuff like that, that's all out of our control. So just treat it like it was injury. He's coming back tonight against the Pacers. And, like I said, I look at it as this is a big opportunity to get back on track. And the Pacers last night got apt, and we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about the Knicks on the update, right? Pacers last night, lost at the Garden to a struggling Knicks team. Right now, you got to fly back to Indiana to face a Nets team with Kyrie Irving. Nets have the big advantage in this game, right? So I expect the Nets to come out with a lot of energy. I expect the Nets come out, even with or without Kyrie, right? Whether Kyrie plays 1 minute or he plays 40 minutes, the Nets are going to have a lot of energy just because of the way that 3-game homestand went. And, you can kind of tell they're not tensions, but you can kind of tell there's a sense of urgency around the locker room, what the heck happened? Obviously, every team goes through stretches, but when you have this much talent on a roster to play that bad for 3 consecutive games is a little alarming. I'm not sounding the alarms yet. All I'm saying is this is big that Kyrie's coming back tonight, and the Nets really need to get back on track. Because the more and more we lose and the more you fall a little back in the conference and the more you see all these other teams start to get hot and stuff and you're like, wow, where do we really stand, right? So, at the record of 23-12 right now, big game tonight. Kyrie's back. Let's see what he does. And I'm not going to guess how many minutes he's going to play. Here's my whole thing. Whatever it takes to win games. I understand people are iffy about Kevin Durant's minutes and James Harden minutes. Look, you want to win games, they're going to need to play a lot. There's no other way to put it. If you want to win basketball games, Kevin Durant and James Harden's going to need to be out there for over half the game. At least one of them. There's no other way to put it. I wish they could only play, if they could play 30 minutes a night, put up really good numbers, and the Nets could win every night, that'd be great. But that's just not the case. When Kevin Durant and James Harden aren't out there, that's not good. So that's another thing what's good about Kyrie coming back. Everyone talking, about Kyrie, everyone talking about Harden and KD's minutes. Well, here's the thing. When Kyrie plays in the road games, you can play him as long as you want. Because really, if you think about it, let's just say the Nets have a road game on a Monday. They wrap up their road trip on a Sunday, like the big road trip coming up in mid-January in a couple weeks here, right? Which will be a big teller for Kyrie, right? Because he'll probably play 2 road games. Then you have that that big 4-game road trip starting in Chicago, ending in Minnesota. That would be a big opportunity for Kyrie and the Nets really to get a groove with each other again, like they had last season. So if you think about it, right? For Kyrie coming back, if you think about it with the Nets, right? Complaining about Kevin Durant's and James Harden's minutes. If you think about it, right, Kyrie in those 4 games, you could play him as much as you want. Because after those 4 games, he might not play for another week and a half, depending on how long the Nets' next road trip is, right? So if you look at it, right, Nets play tonight, obviously on the road. Next time Kyrie could play, earliest, will be January 10th. So that means after tonight, he'll have about 4 days off. That's rare for an NBA player. Usually NBA players only have 1 day. So if you play him 40 minutes tonight, he'll have 4 days off to get ready for the next game. Then you have Monday and Wednesday, January 10th, January 12th. You'll be in Portland, then you'll be in Chicago. Then you go back home for 2 more, right? Kind of 2 away, 2 home. It's kind of home away, right? Then the next time he'll play is January 17th. Like I said, that January 17th one, I apologize. Starting in Cleveland, not Chicago. I apologize. Starting in Cleveland, ending in Minnesota, the 4-game road trip, you can play him as much as you want. Because then the next time he'll be out there will be, that road trip wraps up January 23rd. The next time he'll be out there will be that next Saturday, January 29th, when they can start a West Coast trip. So that's how you got to look at it if you're the Nets, right? In terms of minutes, right? In the games Kyrie plays, take the stress off of Kevin Durant, James Harden, and give the minutes to Kyrie. Because there's a chance Kyrie might play 2 games in 8 days if things go that way, right? Let's say there's a game tonight, January 5th. Next time at earliest Kyrie will play is January 10th against Portland. So that's 4 days off. So if he plays 40 minutes tonight, let's just say, I'm just using an example. 40 minutes is a lot. I don't expect him to play 40 minutes tonight. Let's just say he plays 45 minutes tonight, or plays 45 minutes any game. Then he gets like 5 days off. Well, that's a long time off. Sure, he'll be practicing and stuff, but practice is not the same as games. You're not playing. Practice is not the same as games, right? The intensity level and all that, it's just not. So, that's the thing. So, in terms of people complaining about Kyrie's or KD's and Harden's minutes, you should be glad Kyrie's coming back because it should limit some of that. And when Kyrie's out there, Steve Nash and the Nets, you got to play him. Play him. Because he's only going to play road games. So, when he's in there, take advantage of it. Right? I don't want to see any of this minutes restrictions on Kyrie or say, oh, he's having an off day. No. If he's going to play 4 games in a row, then sit 5 games in a row. Play him hard those 4 games. Let him sit for a week and a half. Then go out there and feel energized again. And it's like he's starting a new season. That's how I look at this. And that's why I don't like the people, too, that are like, oh, guess what? Look at, Kyrie's back. Is it going to mess up the mojo that the Nets got? Kyrie was supposed to be playing opening night in Milwaukee with the Nets. That was not the case. Instead, he's starting tonight against the Pacers on the road. And he'll only be playing road games. So I don't look at this as this is going to mess up the Nets either. I'm fired up Kyrie's back. I'm pumped up about it. Believe me. We all Nets fans can play the what-if game. There's definitely some losses where Kyrie would have been helpful. I recall even the most recent loss against the Timberwolves. We just weren't making shots. Shots were not falling. We were not hitting our shots at the free throw line. We weren't getting to the net. Even if we got to the net, we weren't finishing. We just did not play well. And only scoring one, and losing by 14, that says it all. And our defense was bad too. Kyrie Irving could have added that limit. He could have limited the turnovers. He could have finished at the net. Finished at the net. If he would have gone fouled, he would be able to make his free throws, right? Kyrie Irving could have been used that game. So, I'm definitely glad Kyrie's coming back. Like I said, I'm not one of those fans that gets super frustrated or super worried if Kevin Durant plays 47 of the 48 minutes against the Detroit Pistons on a cold January night. But it does help. Right? I don't sit here. If the Nets win and Kevin Durant plays 47 minutes, the last thing I'm worried about is the fact that Kevin Durant played 47 minutes. But now that Kyrie's back, it does help. On road games, especially if it's a decent lead. Like if it's a 10-point game, and Kyrie's rolling out there doing fine by himself, Kevin Durant and Harden won't, they'll benefit from that extra rest. And tonight we'll really see what it looks like because, Kyrie is playing with, some new guys. I mean, it will be interesting to see how he plays, with Patty Mills and anything like that. But I always look at these guys are professionals, right? These guys, you even look at some of these 10-day guys, right, that they'll sign 10-day contracts. Kyrie's already been in the building, been in the roster practice. Some of these guys, they sign 10-day contracts on a Tuesday, and they're playing that Wednesday night game, right? They might have had morning shoot-around to meet the players, and boom, they're playing in a Wednesday night game. So, I look at this as people saying, oh, is Kyrie going to fit in? Okay, yeah. First off, he's been in the league for a long time. He's that good of a player. He's already been on the team. It's not like he's a new player. He's been on the team for the past, 2 years? He's already played with KD and Harden last season, although it was not many games they played together, and all that good stuff. So, and you look at these 10-day contract guys, right? They come in on a Tuesday night, they'll play that Wednesday night game, and they'll meet the teammates and meet the team at shoot-around on Wednesday morning. They'll play in Wednesday night game, and boom, they'll look like they've been on the team for a little while. So, I don't expect any of that. I'm just pumped up he's back, excited he's back, and like I said, it's a big advantage for the Nets, because everyone always talks about, right? Winning on the road is not easy. So whenever you can add a superstar to just road games, I take it, right? Sure, we all would rather Kyrie just play the full season, right? That's not the case. That's just how it is. The reality is he's only playing road games, and when he's out there, you got to hope the Nets takes advantage of it and get as many wins as they can and win as many games as they can when he's out there. Alrighty, so Kyrie Irving expected to play big chunk of game and season debut for Nets first base. Like I said, I'm not going to set a hard prediction on this, but I think it depends on how the flow of the game's going, right? I mean, if the Nets are up 20 going into the fourth quarter, I don't think Kyrie, Harden, or KD will play much in the fourth. If it's a tie game, or if it's a 5-point game, or if it's a close game, right? If it's a close game, if it's within 10 points, I think you'll see, or at least, I mean, if it's like a 10-point lead, I think you'll probably see them start the quarter. I expect to see what you saw last season. Expect what you saw last season a lot. Expect, Irving to get some time on his own. Expect, Harden and KD to be out there. Expect Harden and Irving to be out there. KD and or Kyrie, right? Expect all that different combinations. That's what the Nets did last season. Not all three of them were on the court at the same time. Not all three of them were off the court at the same time. Expect, sometimes they go solo. Sometimes they're in there, right? Expect that. Just expect kind of what you saw last season. I don't expect any major changes. If I had to set a prediction, just based off of how I think the game might go, I could see 30, 35 minutes. Like I said, I don't see them playing 45. Big chunk of the game's over half the game, which is about 30, 35 minutes. I don't see Kyrie going out there playing 45 minutes in his first game of the season. I just don't. I think just for overall just his health, it's not good. I mean, he has not played an NBA game since getting injured last season in the playoffs. Didn't play any preseason, right? Practice, a little bit when they were in California for the offseason, for training camp. Hasn't practiced at all. He's only practiced a couple times since returning, and now he's playing the game. So I don't see him playing 45 minutes, but I also don't see him playing 20 minutes and not playing any of the second half or anything like that. I see them spacing him out a little bit. That's what I really see, but we'll see. Nets obviously got a plan in place, so we'll see. And like I said, it's not like he's coming off an injury, which could mean something too. It's not like he's coming off a torn ACL where you got to ease him into it. But he hasn't played in a basketball game too since June, July, and we're sitting here in January. So it's been a while. So Brooklyn Nets head coach Steve Nash expects superstar guard Kyrie Irving to have a significant workload in his season debut Wednesday. Nash told reporters that while Irving may not reach his usual minute total against the Indiana Pacers, he'll see plenty of action. I don't think it's where he can play 38 minutes, but I think he could play a big chunk of the game. Like I said, 30 minutes is probably about accurate. I don't see 45. I don't really think. 38 I don't think is crazy, but we'll see. But I think he could play a big chunk of the game. He's played a lot. He's had 3 or 4 full court days with the 5-on-5, so I think he's capable of playing extended minutes, but not necessarily his customary high 30s. Irving, who has not received the COVID-19 vaccine, has not played this season because of the rules in New York City that prohibit unvaccinated individuals from entering certain indoor facilities, including Barclays Center and Brooklyn. The Nets plan to sit Irving until he got vaccinated or the rules changed, but they had a change of heart last month and will allow Irving to play in road games. In addition to home games, Irving restrictions will prevent Irving from playing road games against the New York Knicks and Toronto Raptors. Like many NBA teams, the Nets have been hit hard by COVID-19. Much of their roster has spent time in health and safety protocols in recent weeks. Kevin Durant, James Harden were among them, and Irving will also briefly in health and safety protocols after he returned to the team. Durant, Harden, and Irving are all active now, however. The Nets are largely healthy, which should bode well for their chance of making a run to the top of the conference. Brooklyn is second in the Eastern Conference at 23-12, trailing first place Chicago Bulls by 2 games. The Nets will have the entirety of their big 3 for the first time all season Wednesday. Irving has missed a significant number of regular season and playoff games since signing with the Nets in 2019 because of injuries and his vaccination-related absence. But he has been hugely productive when on the floor. In 74 regular season games for Brooklyn, Kyrie is averaging 27 points, 6.1 assists, 4.9 rebounds, 2.8 three-pointers made, and 1.4 steals per contest. He also shot 50.6% from the field, 40% from beyond the arc, and 92.2% from the free throw line. Just kicked me out of the page here. See if I can get it back up. So that means he was in the 50-40-90 club. Let's see if I can get the page back up here. Here it is. 92.2% of the arc, the free throw line last season, making him the 9th different player in NBA history to join the 50-40-90 club, which is 50% from the field, 90% or 50% from the field, 40% from three, over 50% from the field, over 40% from three, and over 90% from the free throw line. Irving was named an All-Star for the 7th time in his career last season, further cementing his status as one of the NBA's elite players. The Nets will have to manage a unique situation moving forward with Irving only available for road games, but having a player of Irving's caliber for any number of games is a positive for a team with championship aspirations. Like I said, whether he plays every game or only road games, you're still getting an elite player back. It's still the big three. It's KD, it's Kyrie, it's James Harden all together on the court, and that's all that matters. You know, believe me, all of us Nets fans wish Kyrie could play every game. But that's not the reality. It's not the case. The reality is he's only playing road games, and it'll give us an advantage on the road, and that's big. Especially when we get into tougher road environments, right? And the Pacers isn't a crazy road environment, but right, you get on, the West Coast, even like, let's just look at their schedule here. Look at some tough road environments. Chicago's not easy. You look at like the West Coast trip. The Warriors not going to be easy game. Suns is not going to be easy. Nuggets isn't going to be easy. Heat not going to be easy. I'm just going through like Bucks. Especially when you got to go on the road and play Bucks, the Lakers, the Suns, teams that, will pack arenas, and it's not easy to win on the road. So, much needed boost tonight as the Nets try to snap their 3-game skid against the Pacers, and they will be doing it with Kyrie Irving. We've come to accustomed, I feel like, at times as Nets fans without, one of our superstars, but instead it's with Kyrie Irving. So, we'll see how everything goes. But I look at this, right? We've already won 23 games this season without Kyrie. Now with Kyrie, you can only hope that we win more and, we get into a little bit of a groove because we need to snap this 3-game skid. This 3-game skid. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because, like Pacers fans right now, like you go to the Pacers right now or like Pistons, not Pacers fans, Pistons. I know they're on a 2-game winning streak, but they're 7-28 this season. So, or Rockets fans too. They're on an 8-game losing streak. So, I don't want to sound like, I don't like when fans do that sometimes when they, like, their team's really good and they're still complaining. I do it, right? I've done it with the Nets already. But this 3-game skid definitely not a good taste in my mouth and not a good taste in the Nets' mouth. So, good to get Kyrie back. And Kyrie Irving, I said it this morning. I have a Bleacher Report, and you could post stuff. All I said was Kyrie Irving plays basketball today because he does, and I'm fired up about it. Let's look at it. Let's see the percentages. Okay, the percentages aren't out yet of how many people think the Nets will win the game. But sure, that will come out relatively soon here. Alrighty, so that's what I got for Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. Comment down below your thoughts on his return. And what to expect. What do you think what do you think the Nets are going to look like? Is it going to be what we saw last season? Are the Nets going to come out with some extra juice? Is it going to help the Nets go from here all the way to here? What are your expectations? Leave a comment down below. And coming up next, Titans Derrick Henry designated to return from IR after his foot injury. I will tell you why this is huge for the Tennessee Titans and why the rest of the AFC now officially needs to watch out as they get their star running back Derrick Henry back in action. We'll get to that coming up next. Alright, so welcome back here up at the podcast. So Titans Derrick Henry designated to return from IR after foot injury rehab. So yes, you have heard that right. When the injury hit, I think I expected it. I think you guys expected it. I think we all expected it, that Derrick Henry was probably going to be done for the season. And the fact that Derrick Henry is back now is not only just big for the Titans, but it just goes to show you how, I feel like this is like nowadays, like, and it's great to see, like, with all technology, in sports and stuff and all these different things they could do, but I feel like so many guys now are returning from injuries earlier. Like, even, like, I don't mean to downplay a torn ACL, but, like, one of the more common injuries out there, like a torn ACL, now guys are coming back from that so much earlier. Like, it's not even it used to be like a full year recovery. Now guys, they'll injure it in like week 10 and they'll be back ready to go week 1. Like, it really is pretty crazy how much of a difference, what we were like back then to now. And guys even getting injured mid-season and they say, oh, they're done for the year. And they come back practicing before playoffs even start. And that's the case here with Derrick Henry. And look, we can all agree, the Tennessee Titans, the AFC playoff picture right now is pretty wild. It's pretty all over the place. The playoff picture in both NFC and AFC is pretty wild. Some of the scenarios I was looking at over the past couple days are pretty crazy at what needs to happen, what could happen. Obviously you have your most likely scenarios, then you have some crazy scenarios. And before I get into this, I was just looking at this, like, speaking of the Titans and speaking of all the playoffs, obviously, like I said, Titans are definitely, they've already clinched. They don't have to worry at all about, getting eliminated. They've already clinched not only their division, but a wild card spot. And if they win this weekend and the Chiefs lose and they get some help, Titans very well could be on their way to winning the AFC. And, then you add getting Derrick Henry back on top of all that. You don't know how huge this is for Titans. Like, this has been an exciting past couple days. You blow out the Dolphins at home on Sunday, 34-3. Then you get some positive news earlier this week on, like, Monday about Henry. And now it's official that he is, coming off the IR and he's going to return to practice. And, obviously he's still listed as on the IR. They won't activate him officially until he can play. But, the fact that he's coming back to practice is huge. And the fact that he's coming back to practice before the playoffs starts. Because it's not like he's coming back to practice the week of their playoff game, which could be possibly after the bye week, if they have the bye week first round, which is the wild card round, him coming back that week and trying to get all ramped up. The fact that he could be coming back 2 weeks before they even play is huge and pivotal in the ramp-up period and for him to get ready to go. So right now the Titans stand at 11-5 overall. They're 7-4 in the conference, 4-1 in their division, and on a 2-game winning streak. But I was looking at some of the crazy scenarios in the playoffs. Like I said, we'll get to Derrick Henry and all that good stuff in a second. But, to look at the AFC playoff picture, like I said, if the season would end right now, right this second, it would be the Colts and the Chargers, Patriots, Colts, Chargers would be in. So the wild card round, it would be these are the 4 division winners. It would be the Titans, Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, and the 3 other teams that got in would be the Patriots, Colts, and Chargers. Now, there was this crazy scenario, right? Raiders and Chargers play Sunday night. Colts, Jaguars will play Sunday in the afternoon. There's this crazy scenario, which probably would never happen. Not the tie, the tie part is not even, I don't think the most unrealistic part, but let's say the Jaguars beat the Colts, right? And let's just say the Cowboys beat the Colts. Or Jaguars beat the Colts, right? 2-14 Jaguars on an 8-game losing streak. They're going to have this clown thingy going on at the stadium because they want their Trent Baalke, their GM, fire, which I don't blame them. So all that stuff going on. Let's say the Colts go on the road and lose to the Jaguars. Since the Raiders-Chargers game is Sunday night, I don't think this would ever happen. But both teams can technically agree to just tie and that would allow the Chargers and the Raiders to get in. Because the only way the Colts don't get into the playoffs is if they lose to the Jaguars and the Chargers and Raiders tie. If they lose to the Jaguars and the Chargers win, they're in. If they lose to the Jaguars and the Raiders in, they're in. No matter what happens, they're in as long as the Chargers and Raiders don't tie. So that was one of the wild playoff scenarios, and one of the funny things people were saying, like, oh, what if this happened? What if the Colts lost to the Jaguars? Which is not going to happen. I can guarantee right now that's not happening. And then also, the Raiders-Chargers tie, and then both of them are in the Chargers, and the Colts get eliminated, which nobody would absolutely see coming. Nobody can even see the Colts losing to the Jaguars coming. But that scenario also happening is pretty crazy. So I just wanted to say that first. We'll get to all that stuff, more in detail on Friday as we get into the Saturday games and it all into the Sunday games, and this regular season wraps up with the Chargers-Raiders Sunday night in Vegas at Allegiant Stadium, which I guess you could probably say that's the biggest game that has been played there in the 2 years of that stadium being open. Last season, obviously, no fans. Raiders were pretty much out of it late in the season. This year, that game's your pure example of a win or go home, unless if Utah and the Colts lose. But that's a crazy different story for a different day. Either way, time to get to Derrick Henry really in depth here and get to the Colts, or Titans rather. Look, right? We can all agree that certain players on certain teams make a difference, right? Like, you talk about a game changer. Like, there's good players, and then there's game changers, and then there's players that simply, if you lose them, that could change the trajectory of your season. And that is what Derrick Henry is. And I understand that the Titans have done just enough. That's the key word. They've done just enough. I'm not criticizing them. I'm not, gonna be, be harsh on them or anything. I'm not going to take away any of their success without Henry, because believe me, they've still found ways to win. It hasn't been pretty. It's been pretty ugly, but they found ways, and they're still 11-5, and they have a realistic shot this weekend if they take care of business against Texans on the road, which is very possible, to get the number 1 seed in the AFC, and they're only getting healthier, and that's huge for the Titans. But back to my Derrick Henry point, like, there's players that are game changers, right? There's players that are, completely season changers. Like, if you lose them, your season could completely go crazy. And that's what Derrick Henry is. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL when healthy. And your team could be here when you have him, but if he's not on your team and you got to go on the road and beat a good team, you might look like you're down here. And at times the Titans have looked like that. And if there was ever a time for Derrick Henry to get healthy and come back, now was the perfect time. You're heading into playoffs. You already clinched your playoff spot, so there's no need to worry about that. So it's not like you need to rush him back and say, hey, we need you for this must-win game. No, they clinch. The only thing they want now is to win the AFC and get a first-round bye and clinch home field advantage throughout. Let the playoffs run through Tennessee. So you got to clinch the division. You're 1 win away. You clinch your division, clinch the playoff. You're 1 win away from clinching the AFC, which would run home field advantage throughout Tennessee with the Titans would run home field advantage throughout. So the AFC playoffs are going to have to run through Tennessee, and now you're only getting healthier. And I understand. I've been a very big believer in the Chiefs. I'm a big believer in the Ravens. Although the Bills at times this season have been choppy, I'm still a very big believer in the Bills. I think you always got to count Bill Belichick and the Patriots in it whenever they are. I know last season they were eliminated this time last year, but whenever they're in it, you always got to keep them in the back of your mind, because you always got to keep them in your line of sight, because you got to watch out. It's Bill Belichick. He's a genius. He's a mastermind. Whatever happens. He could just whatever. He put together a game plan that meant Mac Jones only threw the ball 3 times and the Patriots still would win, which is just mind-boggling to me. But either way, back to the Titans, right? You have a lot of these really good teams in the AFC. And if you look at what all these good teams have, they all have a really key asset, right? Chiefs got Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill. You look at the Bills, you got Allen and Diggs. I'm just going offense, right? Defense, different story. Some really good defensive players, too. You look at the Patriots, and they don't really have that key asset, but they do have Mac Jones, who's done just enough, for them to win. Kendrick Bourne's had a good season as well, Nelson Aguilar. So you go to those guys like that. Then you go to, like, the Bengals, and you look at that, just 3-headed monster at receiving. You got a good running back, and you got a good, quarterback. But if you look at what all these teams have, they have, like, one really big weapon. Like, they have one really, really, really big weapon. You even go down the list and you look at the Colts, Jonathan Taylor. You look at the Chargers. Well, it's Justin Herbert, or it's it's Austin Eckler, or it's even Keenan Allen. You can make the argument. Even Justin Herbert's their big key weapon. For the Bengals, it could be Jamar Chase. He's been their X factor, or it could be Joe Burrow, whatever. For the Bills, it's Josh Allen or Stephon Diggs, right? Each team has it. And the Titans, without Derrick Henry, seem like it's a bunch of really solid players put on a roster. Right? Julio Jones not the same player he once was. Ryan Tannehill's an average quarterback. A.J. Brown's good, but he's slightly inconsistent. He was injured. Now you look at it, you look at your running back, and now the fact that you get Derrick Henry back, that's huge. Because if you look at all the other teams in the AFC, they all have that one guy. And the Titans had that one guy. Then he got injured. Yeah, they were still winning and finding ways, but they weren't the same team. Now you bring Derrick Henry back into the equation, it's like, wow, the Titans can be a true threat moving forward here. And for people like me who think it's going to be a cakewalk for maybe the Chiefs or the Bills or whatever, with the Titans getting Henry back or close to getting him back on the field for a game, I think automatically you got to say the Titans got to be up there in the AFC as a really true contender. Because they have that elite force on offense. And they're getting that elite force back with having Derrick Henry back in the lineup. And that's huge for the Titans. Because all these other teams, Chiefs, Bills, they all have that elite weapon. Bills have Stephon Diggs. Bengals, have Jamar Chase. Chiefs have a two-headed monster with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. They all have that elite weapon. And the Titans, for the majority of the season after Derrick Henry went down, were missing that elite weapon. And it was noticeable. And now that they're getting that back, Titans, rest of the AFC, the NFL, has now got to watch out. Because if A.J. Brown can really start to turn a corner, if Tannehill can get back to being himself, which this season we've seen a little bit. He's had some good games, but he's also had some real head scratchers. But you get Derrick Henry back, and that's huge. So Titans Derrick Henry designated to return from IR after foot injury rehab. Tennessee Titans announced Wednesday that superstar running back Derrick Henry has been designated for return from the injured reserve list, clearing his way to begin practicing with the team. Henry, who hasn't played since October because of a foot injury, will now have a 21-day window to practice with the squad without counting against the 53-man roster. Henry, 28 years old, was having an epic season before fracturing his foot, rushing for 937 yards and 10 touchdowns in just 8 games, while adding 18 catches for 254 yards. He was on pace to match last year's incredible campaign, 2,027 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns. It's unclear if Henry will be deemed healthy enough to play over the weekend against Houston, though with team already clinching a playoff berth, there's little incentive to rush him back. The Titans will clinch the top seed in the AFC and a first-round bye with a win or a loss and several other teams losing. So if they just take care of business against the Texans, which is very realistic, they'll get that number 1 seed in the AFC, and they'll clinch home field advantage throughout, which would give Henry even more time to get up to speed before his return. Yeah, because he would miss this week, which he would be practicing. Obviously, they wouldn't play Wild Card Weekend, then you would have the game. So he'd have 3 weeks of practice and he'd have 3 weeks of practice before the game. He'll have this week's practice, next week's practice, and a practice leading up in game week practice. I'd assume they would do practice next week, or maybe they just take a complete bye week and then get going, depending on who their opponent is, which probably is the case. So if they go that route, he'll have practice this week, which he's been. Then he'll have next week, though they won't practice, they'll have a bye. Then you go into the divisional game, whoever that may be against. You know it's going to be home if you clinch home field advantage, obviously. You go into that game, and there's a chance there for him to come back. So there's a good chance Henry gets kind of the ramp-up practice this week. Then we'll get a nice week off next week. Then we'll get the opportunity to really play in that, AFC divisional game. So you're really looking at 3 weeks here, including the practice of game week that you're leading up to. That's obviously if they win, which I think there's probably a 99% chance they beat the Houston Texans. Can't see them. I don't think anybody here can see them losing to the Texans. I don't even care that game's on the road. It's against the Texans. They're an awful football team. So if you do, in fact, win this game this week, or if you lose and things happen, you're going to need some help, then, you will, then you might have to play Wild Card Weekend. So this is if you're really thinking about it for the Titans. Although on paper it might look like, it's the Texans. This is a big game. You need to win this game. Because you don't know how big that would be for Derrick Henry to get a week of practice, then maybe a week off, then another week, and then game time. That'd be huge. So here's the deal on Ian Rappaport. This is what he reported. It is 9 weeks from surgery for an injury that had an estimated recovery time of 6 to 10 weeks. If Tennessee has the bye, it will be 11 weeks. More than enough time for the NFL's best backs to return to full strength. Getting him back for the playoffs would obviously be a huge boost for the team's chances, though in his stead, Dante Foreman has played well, rushing for 497 yards and 3 touchdowns over the past 8 games. He'll also eclipse the 100-yard mark. He's also eclipsed the 100-yard mark in 3 of his past 5 contests. But there is only one Henry. He's a singular talent who is still somehow 6th in the league in rushing yards despite missing half the season. And getting him back transforms Tennessee's offense. Like I said, they're just not the same offense without him. He's a game changer. He's a game wrecker for the defense. He could completely alter your season. And they still got the number 1 seed with him being out, but getting him back is pivotal. And I think that last line says it all, too. He's still 6th in the league in rushing yards despite missing half the season. Still 6th in the league. A lot of other running backs, if they miss half the season, they'd be probably like 30th in the league in rushing yards. Him, though, he was on pace to get 2,000 rushing yards again. That's why he's 6th. He's still got 937, which, to be honest with you, 930 rushing yards isn't anything spectacular, but getting it in 8 games is solid. And for a average running back to finish the season with that, I'd be satisfied with that. Right? You didn't get over 1,000, but it's darn near close. So, and I was talking to somebody over the weekend about this with Dante Foreman, a guy on Tennessee too who injury has stepped up and been a key piece. You wonder, what's in store and all that, if they still keep him for a depth piece if something like this would ever happen again, or even just as a rotation back, because Henry can't play every single snap, but a guy who has really made a name for himself these past couple weeks, which is really, really good to see for, a guy that's nobody really heard of. I picked him up for my fantasy team, and he was doing good. So definitely, definitely for other teams, an option to look at. Foreman might be a under-the-radar name to look at this offseason, depending on what the Texans do. I don't really know his full contract, if he's a free agent, or if they'd have to trade for him. But I will tell you this. If you're an NFL, for the other NFL teams out there, you got to look at that as an option. Because he's really made a name for himself through the couple weeks he's played and filling in big shoes to still keep that run game at still a good level. It's not the level Derrick Henry's at, but, there's not many running backs we've ever seen. There's not many running backs like Derrick Henry we've seen in a while. Derrick Henry will probably go down as one of the more dominant backs ever once his career's up. So it's hard to compare it to Derrick Henry, but for teams that are looking for a running game or depth, Dante Foreman definitely a guy to look at. You can't let his production and his steady play go unnoticed because he still kept that run game afloat. And they could have easily sank and been awful, but he kept it afloat and he kept it rolling. So Derrick Henry returns to practice, and the Titans look like they are getting a much-needed boost just before the playoffs. And I don't think people realize how pivotal of a win it was last week. Not only for the Titans, but that was a bad loss for the Dolphins. So you look at it big win for the Titans. So either way, let's look at the upcoming games here. By the way, just out of curiosity, if you look at this, Titans are 10.5-point favorites going into Houston. So, 10.5-point favorites. They should have no issue taking care of business there. And we will see. So, by the way, the Bills are 16-point favorites against the Jets, which is wild to me because the Buccaneers were 13.5-point favorites against the Jets, albeit the Jets were at home, but still. And the Buccaneers beat the Bills. And I understand the Jets are on the road, but the Bills lost to the Bucs, and the Jets played the Bucs close, but the Bills are still 16-point favorites. So a little interesting how they did the odds there. Because the Jets were 13.5-point favorites against the Buccaneers, or underdogs rather. I get it, they're home, but it's the Buccaneers and it's the Jets. Nobody saw a 4-point loss coming, or a 4-point game coming. Because kind of interesting that this week it's a 16-point favorites for the Bills, given that the Jets were 13-point favorites last week and played the Bucs close. You think the Bills would be like 10-point favorites? I get it, they're on the road, but still, I mean, I understand the Jets got crushed against the Bills. I was at that game. What was it, like 45-10? I get it, they got crushed, but still. That was with Mike White, 4 interceptions for him, and that was, just different Jets team. Jets team is way better now than it was then. I'm not saying the Jets are going to win. I'm just saying Bills are pretty big favorites for the way the Jets played last week. You think they would be maybe like 13 again, or 10, or a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns? Not 6. 16 is pretty high. Either way, let's look at the NBA games, and I'll give you some of my picks here. 76ers Magic, I'll give 76ers to win. Hornets Pistons, give Hornets to win. Wizards Rockets, Wizards to win. Celtics Spurs, I'll give Celtics to win. Warriors Mavericks, give Warriors to win. Bucks Raptors, give Bucks to win. Timberwolves Thunder, give Timberwolves to win. Hawks Kings, give Hawks to win. Heat Trailblazers, give Heat to win. And Jazz Nuggets, give Jazz to win. Nets, like I was talking about earlier, also play tonight. Obviously, I did the whole segment on Kyrie Irving. He returns tonight for the Brooklyn Nets on the road against the Pacers. Nets come into this game 23-12 on a 3-game losing streak, so they look to snap it. And the Pacers come into this game a struggling 14-24, probably one of the teams that are going to look to deal some assets at the deadline. Nets are a 8.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 224.5. This game is on tonight, 7:30 Eastern. You can find it on Yes Network. The percentages of how many people think the Nets will win and all that stuff is not out yet. So, either way, I do think the Nets pull it through tonight. Like I talked about earlier, they've been awful the past 3 games. They've been terrible. There's been no other way to put it. Whether Kyrie puts up 30 points or whether he scores 2 points, I think there's going to be an extra added energy. I definitely think there's going to be a much-needed piece added back into the lineup. I think some of the woes finishing at the net are going to be kind of solved with Kyrie. Not fully, because Kyrie's not going to make every shot, but finishing at the rim, driving, getting the ball to the net, scoring, drawing fouls, Kyrie can do all that. And I think we're going to see a lot of that tonight, so give me the Nets. And speaking of the Pacers coming off a brutal loss last night at the Garden. So, you get crushed last night against a struggling Knicks team. I mean, I don't mean to say crushed. They lost by 10, but R.J. Barrett had a big game. Julius Randle had a huge game. You let 2 guys that were struggling go off on you, so that's not a good look anyway. Now you go into a game against the Nets, you get Kyrie back and their big threes back in action. It's a tough little stretch here for the Pacers, albeit a back-to-back, a home-away back-to-back, or away-home back-to-back, which is never easy. So, give me the Nets. As for college basketball, got some games on tonight as well. Some good ranked games. Not bad. A good game in the Big East between Villanova and Creighton. There, Creighton 10.5-point favorites, but Villanova rather 10.5-point favorites, but Creighton's still a 10-3 team. Actually, have a better record than Villanova. Iowa State, Texas Tech's a good game. Couple good ones. But we'll start off with these. Florida, Alabama is a good one. Alabama on the road. I'll give Alabama the win. Houston, South Florida. I'll give Houston the win. Michigan State, Nebraska. I'll give Michigan State the win. Tennessee, Ole Miss. Give Tennessee the win. Villanova, Creighton. I think it'll be close, but I think Villanova wins. Iowa State, Texas Tech. I'll give Iowa State the win. And that's what's on tap tonight in college basketball. And we got 2 games on tonight in the NHL. Maple Leafs, Oilers. I'll give Maple Leafs the win. And Penguins, Blues. I will give Penguins to win. Like I talked about, ugly loss last night for Kentucky. There's no other way to put it. I mean, it was ugly. It was brutal. It just can't happen. When you want to get to the March Madness or want to win the SEC, losses like that on the road will hurt you down the road. When you look at coming down to seeding for the SEC tournament, you'll look back at games like that where LSU didn't play great, Kentucky didn't play great, but Kentucky played awful. LSU played Kentucky was awful. So the team that played is going to win that game. And, I mean, they manhandled us when it came to defense, and we just were not getting to the net. I recall the 2 plays late in the game against Jacob Toppin. I mean, he missed 2 mid-range shots. You have an open lane to the net, you got to take it. Even if you miss it, there's a high rate of you getting fouled, and you go to the free throw line. You get 2 free shots. He did the one time, and he made 1 of 2, which Kentucky was awful last night on free throws. An all-around sloppy game. And the final 15 seconds were wild. I mean, Shibwe stole that ball, and he rushed everything. All he needed to do was hold on to that ball and pass it, and Kentucky could have called a timeout with about 10 seconds left. They would have been down 1, and then they could have ran an inbounds play and ran that thing down to the final second and shot it. And if they make it, they make it. If they don't, they lose. Instead of making a bad pass, turnover, LSU scores, then making another bad mistake, turnover, LSU scores. LSU scores 4 points in the matter of about 5 seconds, and it goes from being a 1-score game, goes from being a 1-point game to you're down by 5, and then with 6 seconds left, you chuck up a half-court shot. And I don't know why Calipari didn't call a timeout when it was 63-60, because 63-60 is still a one-possession game, well in reach. He should have called a timeout, and Kentucky could have set up a play to get a 3, and if you missed, you could have fouled, and you would have needed a miracle at that point, but it would have been better than advancing the ball with the crowd noise and just guys all over the place. Just an ugly finish, really was. It was a crazy finish, but ugly. I mean, when Shibwe got that ball on the deep pass down court, that was like as bad as it could get for LSU. Like, that's as bad as a mistake as you can make. Making a bad pass down court. And then what was even worse was the fact that Shibwe just turned around and passed it. Nobody was there. That was bad pass to Mintz. He's got to turn around, hold on to that ball, look over his options, then pass. And Kyrie Kentucky had a timeout in their back pocket. They didn't use it, which is besides me. I would have used it right then and there, but especially even after the 60 when they turned that game into 63-60, because that's still a one-possession game. You're a 3-pointer away from forcing overtime. You could use the excuse, you were out without Xavier Wheeler and Ty Washington, but, it's sports, right? I as a fan, I hate using injuries as an excuse. I'm a Yankee fan, and I know all too well fans making excuses about injuries. Oh, this guy's out, Oh, what's this lineup? You can't use excuses as injuries. It's sports. It's going to happen. Especially a physical sport like basketball. Injuries are going to happen. Wheeler, that's just a freak accident. He wasn't looking. He ran into a guy twice his size. Nothing you could do about that. That's just sports. When guys go down, you got to step up, and the other guys got to step up, and Kentucky did not do that, and it was ugly. So let's get to fantasy basketball. Right now, I'm winning 514 and 305, so it's going pretty good there. Tonight, I got Tyrese Maxey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Miles Bridges, Nikola Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, Kelly Oubre, John Collins, Buddy Hield, and Rashawn Holmes. Donovan Mitchell's day-to-day. Mitchell is probable for Wednesday's contest against the Nuggets due to a left lower back strain, so it looks like he will be good to go tonight. Maxey's out. He was placed in the league's health and safety protocols, so he has not played. He didn't play Monday's game. He also won't play tonight. John Collins, update on him. Collins has cleared the league's health and safety protocols, but won't play Wednesday against the Kings. Shams of the Athletic Report. So he won't play tonight, but he is cleared, so he's on his way back. And Rashawn Holmes is still in he's still in health and safety protocols. So hopefully he's back sooner rather than later. And as for fantasy football, like I said, my PPR league is done. That league's done. We finished up last week. As for my league, my non-PPR league, got one more week to go. I have a 51% chance of winning, so it's going to be close. And I added Titans defense. So I dropped Eagles defense, added Titans defense. So that's my one lone move I made. And we'll get into more injuries and all that stuff moving forward. Like I said, without Thursday Night Football, you have some more room to maneuver with players since there is no Thursday Night Football. So you got just Saturday games and Sunday games, and that's it. And I'm really fired up for that Sunday night game. That Sunday night game, hopefully it's a good game, right? Hopefully it's not a blowout. But in terms of what's on stake for that, what's on line for that game, will be a playoff spot. Will be the final playoff spot in the AFC. Assuming the Colts beat the Jaguars and we don't get a crazy tie and just something wild happens, which would be fun. I got to admit, this season has been pretty wild, so there's been some crazy moments this season, so nothing would really surprise me if something like that happened where the Jaguars, number one, just the Jaguars beating the Colts just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, although who saw the Jets almost beating the Bucs? Nobody. But either way, that's going to be a good game, and hopefully it is a good game. Because Sunday Night Football, last game of the NFL season, before playoffs, you win, you're in, you lose, you go home. And you know that place is going to be rocking too, because the Raiders, other than, when they were in Oakland, they had some big games. But this is definitely the biggest game they've played in Vegas at Allegiant Stadium, at all. Last season, there was no fans allowed. This season, there is, and you're in a big game, Week 18. I mean, you can't ask for a bigger game than this. Week 18, win, you're in. Lose, you're done. So, and for both teams, it's a huge game. Not just for the Raiders, but for the Chargers as well. Both teams, win, you're in. Lose, you're done. So, that'll do it for today's podcast. Another good one in the books. I'm trying to think tomorrow. If something crazy happens with Kyrie, like he scores 50, it'll be something I talk about. But I want to get to some Knicks stuff. I want to get to Baker Mayfield and the Browns. With the offseason near and possibly him playing his last game of the season with his injury, and him possibly not playing the final game of the season, which, by the way, Joe Burrow's not going to play against the Browns this weekend. So if Baker Mayfield doesn't play, you could be looking at a slugfest with that game. That will be a very difficult game for me to pick. It will be two backup quarterbacks battling it out. You'll probably just have to go with overall outside of the quarterback position who has the most talented team, which is probably the Bengals, but we'll figure that out. So with him possibly playing his final game of the season, and there's the old rumor and all that stuff of what's going on with him, there are questions. There's no doubt about it. There's questions around Baker Mayfield's future with the Browns. I want to get to it. I was going to talk about it yesterday. I was going to talk about the Knicks and the Browns yesterday. I didn't. With the Knicks winning last night, I didn't want to talk about their struggles today because they won last night. It was a really good win. R.J. Barrett and Julius Randle scored a ton of points and were big. So, maybe I'll talk more about it tomorrow. Give today a day where Knicks fans could celebrate with the win. But tomorrow, kind of want to talk about because they have not been the team we all expected them to be this season. And I think that's because they overachieved last season. I don't want to give everything away that what I was going to say, but definitely that's an option. I want to get to Mayfield. Like I said, if anything else, if Kyrie puts up 50 points, I'm sure I'll get to it. But also was going to talk about, C.J. Mosley winning the award. And next week's big because next week there will be a ton of, I'm assuming there will be a couple head coach firings. I'm sure Nagy's going to get fired. Chance Zimmer gets fired. Mike Zimmer. We'll keep an eye out on what happens with Joe Judge and the New York Giants. I think we can all agree Gettleman's going to be gone, but will Joe Judge be? So next week, there'll probably be a lot of breaking news around the NFL, and then we'll also get ready for playoffs. So a lot coming, a lot ahead on the podcast. So that'll do it for today's podcast. As always, hopefully you all enjoyed it. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.